Hi, welcome back to another episode of the book set Completionist. My name is Tom, and this is episode 10. Oh, well, what do you know? Isn't that a major accomplishment for any YouTuber nowadays to get 10 videos on his channel? Yes, I'm over the moon with this amazing achievement, if I may say so. So today I have something special to celebrate this joyous occasion, right? That seems like a lot of books. Is that like really one set? Yeah, but it's also not just one set. It's one set, but I've got multiple copies of some of the parts in that set, and I'll show you later on what they are. But for now, let's guess. We're talking about a series that has 7 parts to it, and it was published over a quite long period of time, and notably there were the first 3 books that were published in the 50s, 51, 52, and 53. Then there was almost a 30-year gap to the 4th part, which was published in 1982, then another one in 86, then 88, and the final installation was published in 1993. Okay, does that ring a bell? Maybe it does, doesn't. Well, if I tell you the genre, it might become a lot clearer, and the genre is science fiction. Yes. Okay. And if I tell you the author, then it should really stop being a mystery at all. The author is called Isaac Asimov. Now, I don't need to go on, do I? Yes, I'm talking about the Foundation series, and I'll show each part of that set to you now. Why do I have more than just the 7 novels that are in the set? I usually don't try to collect every single issue of a certain set, but because the Foundation series is such a famous work of fiction, even here in Thailand, you can easily find them. And that leads me to discover a lot of the different issues of each part of the set. Let me show you. The first part is called Foundation. This is part of the series of the 80s. But I also have this. This is what you can buy in the shops nowadays. And then I also stumbled across this. This is undated for some reason. It just says here, copyright 1951. But it looks nice. So this is Foundation, the first part in the set. Then you've got Foundation and Empire of the 80s set. And then you've got a set that was released in the 2000s that looked like this. And I also was able to find an issue from the 1960s. That looks great, but that's really hard to find. Then the third part in the original trilogy that was published in the 1950s is Second Foundation, which I also have in the most recent issue. Then we skip to 1982, where Isaac Asimov continued with his epic chronicles. And there I've got Foundation's Edge from the 2000 series, and also from the 1980 series. And then we start also seeing this. This is a set released in the 90s. The fifth part in the set is called Foundation and Earth, in the 2000 set, and in the 90s set, and luckily also in the 80s set. That looks the best, don't you think? This was published in 1986. Then we move to Prelude to Foundation. In the 80s set, this was published in 1988. And also in the 90s set. Prelude. And then for some reason I also got my hands on a massive hardback called Prelude to Foundation. This was also published in the 80s. It's massive. Don't particularly like these large format books, but this one looks pretty shiny. And then finally we have the last part in the set called Forward, the Foundation. So from the 90s set I've got these three: Edge, Earth, and Prelude. From the 2000 set I've got Foundation and Empire, Edge, Earth. From the most recent set, I've got only these two. They're the slimmest ones. Sadly, only one of the 60 set. Of the 80 set, I've got them almost all complete. Foundation. Foundation and Empire. Second Foundation. Then Edge and Earth and Prelude. To further commemorate this 10th episode, I have decided to review 13 John Grisham novels. I have mixed feelings about John Grisham. You might say it's a love-hate relationship, perhaps. About 10 years ago, when I wasn't really into reading at all, and I wanted to get back into it, I wasn't sure where to start, what to read. So I figured that John Grisham would be the most accessible of authors to just start the hobby again. John Grisham is very popular. His novels are sold in the millions, are translated into several languages all over the world, so he's obviously a very accomplished writer. But there is also a lot of criticism. His novels are formulaic. That means that if you read one, you probably will have read all of them because they'll follow a similar structure with similar characters. But alright, I'm going to talk about all the books that I've read, 13 in total, starting with this one, Camino Island. It's one of his more recent works. This one was published in 2017. This one starts with a heist, a robbery from a university library of a manuscript of The Great Gatsby. Okay, that's definitely something new. It's not just a bank robbery, it's a book robbery. Sort of. Then the main character gets introduced. It's a woman, she's an author herself, and she's been let go of her job, and now she's going on sort of a trip to finish her novel. So she goes to this Camino Island, which doesn't really exist, but on that island there are a lot of other authors. It's sort of like a community of novelists, and there's also a book trader, and this is a very interesting character, and she gets involved with the guy, but then some shady organization or maybe even law enforcement contacts the girl and asks her to spy on this guy because they think that he is connected to that book theft somehow. It sounds interesting, but it's really not. It's a lot about people having dinner parties and the girl sort of conflicted about her feelings towards the guy, but also her mission that she's getting paid for, and it just all goes on and on and on. It's really not good. I reviewed this before saying that when you're like John Grisham and you're so accomplished, then you could really write whatever at that stage in your career, and your publisher will accept it because they know you're going to sell. They'll sell the book no matter what's in it, just going by the name and the fame of Grisham. Now, I don't think that's a good position to be in any writer's career because it makes you lazy and it makes your stories bad, my opinion. So don't read that, please. Then in 2010, John Grisham published The Confession. This book is about a confession of a black man who admits that he killed a white girl. We're talking about a place in rural America where the death penalty is a thing. Black people are still not very popular in those parts of the country, say the Midwest or the South. This book deals with when a man is wrongfully accused, but police brutality or police malpractice is leading to a confession. The police is bullying the guy. He's a young boy, and he's 18 or something. The black guy is, and they force a confession out of him, which is then used to prosecute the boy, even though he later retracts his confession, saying he was pressured into it, and none of that was actually real. But law enforcement, the authorities, the judicial system, they all just pounce on that confession and use that, despite there ever being the absence of evidence, the absence of a body even. The girl has gone missing, but she was never found. And so they just assume that she's dead, and based on the confession of the guy, they prosecute him for murder, and they sentence him to death. He goes to death row. He sits in jail for a long time. His lawyer is trying to do everything, appeals and everything, but it doesn't work. But then the real killer shows up in the book, and the real killer has some remorse, and he tries to do something that makes the black guy save his life. Yeah, but it all goes pretty slowly, and in the end it doesn't work. And that's not spoiling it. It's pretty obvious from how the book is structured that the black boy has to die, because that's the point that Grisham wants to make. It does have some political messaging into it. Grisham has his own personal beliefs about the death penalty, which, to be honest, I share. He opposes it. I do too. I think it's a terrible thing. And it seems the novel is more, it's a tool to make the message clear that John Grisham wants the reader to know. And that's all right. I think he's right in that, but it just becomes a little bit like preachy and a bit like the didactic, teaching the reader why the death penalty is bad. Yeah, okay, I already know that. So, also, cannot recommend. Don't read it. In 2001, The Painted House was published. This is really a very odd novel compared to any of his other works, which is mostly like legal thrillers or sort of spy action stuff. But this one is really different. This is more like a historical novel that takes place in the 1950s in rural America again. This novel is about a family of farmers who grow cotton on their land, and they're pretty poor. They need outside help from laborers, either immigrants from Mexico or hillbillies from further up country, to help them harvest the cotton. But there's always a threat of flooding and tensions between the several groups of immigrants and the local people, and yeah, okay. That's really it. There are some tensions and some things happen, but it's really dull. It's mostly from the point of view of a 7-year-old boy who does things that don't fit his age. This happens many times when children are the main characters of books, that they do things that don't really make sense given their age. So they do much more adult stuff, and they have dialogues with people that don't really sound like what a child would say. And then to compensate for their advanced intelligence, the author, and Grisham does it too, makes them cry or makes them say stupid things, or to balance it out. I don't think it's a good way of using kids as main characters. And this one also, it just goes on and on about the boy waking up every day and doing his chores and then trying to paint a house, because that's the theme. A painted house is a more beautiful house with higher status. If your house is unpainted, you are considered poor and people don't respect you. Don't read that either. Next up is The Brethren from 2000. In this story, there are 3 judges who have been convicted for all sorts of crimes themselves. Isn't that ironic? They are in a low-security prison, and they help other inmates with their legal problems. But they also want to make money, and their activities don't really pay that much. And what they do is they create a fictional character that's gay. They post advertisements in local newspapers where this gay guy is reaching out to potential lovers, saying, "Oh, I'm so lonely, please come and meet me." And when people respond to that, return letters, then these three judges, who are now criminals, basically, they sort of analyze these people, and if they're rich and famous and powerful, then they start extorting the people, saying, "Ha, you sent a letter to us responding to a gay guy's request for romance, but whoa, we tricked you." Yeah. You see where it's going? Now, until one of the people who respond is the presidential candidate. So the presidential candidate, who no less has been planted there by the CIA. The CIA has an agenda. They want stuff done, and they think that they can manipulate an election by having this candidate, but they don't know that he's gay, and they don't know what he's doing. But these three judges, they find out, and they extort again. They extort the guy. They extort the CIA and try to get money out of it. That's their motivation, to get rich, and they do. In the end, they do get rich. That's it. Don't read that either. That concludes the books that I still own. Let's continue, because the others I have since disposed of. The Firm from 1991. That is arguably his most famous novel, and that was made into a movie, as have other books of his. And that novel is pretty silly too. It's about a guy who comes out of law school. He's very excited about his new job in law, and he joins a firm. And as he starts working there, it becomes clear that the firm is involved in all sorts of shady dealings. And he becomes entangled in it himself, and he needs to find a way out of it, make sure he doesn't get scapegoated by the other members of his firm. And it turns out that he has all sorts of skills that don't make sense. He's like this James Bond, Jason Bourne character. He can run, fly, jump, the whole thing. So yeah, if you want to read something fluff, you think it's fun that somebody acts in a way that's completely inconsistent with their supposed background, then okay, go ahead. It's probably fun. I didn't like it. But you could maybe read it. Others have enjoyed it, so who am I to say, huh? Okay. Then let's also talk about The Client from 1993, another of his novels that has been adapted into a movie. This one is even worse than The Firm. This one is about a boy. Again, a child. Yes, the child is the main character. A boy witnesses a suicide, and before the guy suicides himself, kills himself, he shares the perpetrator of a murder, very high-profile murder. And so this kid knows about that, and the FBI wants to know what the kid knows, and the mob wants to know what the kid knows, and the kid has to go into hiding, and he gets a lawyer who is a young woman, and all that is very silly. Yeah, I didn't like it. I can say don't read that, it's dumb. Just skip that one, please. The Client, no. Now, are there going to be any good novels that I'm going to discuss? Yeah, all right, let's talk about this one, The Partner from 1997. This one is about a guy who works at a law firm, but he wants to get out of it, and he wants to take a lot of money. He steals $90 million from his job, from his employer, and he runs away. He goes into hiding. He goes to Brazil, changes his name, his looks. He gets plastic surgery, and he lives a good life until he gets discovered, and he needs to run away from his pursuers. And that's actually fun. This one is not that bad. Again, you need to suspend your disbelief. Just go with it. The character does all these amazing things that don't make sense but are fun, and there is some interesting ending to that one. So finally, yeah, I can say you could read that John Grisham novel if you want to read any of his work, and read that one. Then we go to The Broker. These titles are also a bit terrible. 2005. Here we have a sort of ex-spy who has been caught by law enforcement or the authorities, and he gets released because the CIA wants to let him fly in order to lure out is that a word, to lure out? In order to lure his enemies. This guy has a lot of enemies from his previous career as a spy. And I don't know, it doesn't make any sense why CIA would do that. Here, the guy flees to Italy, to a city called Bologna, which is very well described. Maybe that's all the novel really is. It's about the guy walking in Bologna, eating spaghetti and drinking espressos, and that is a large part of the story. It made me want to visit that city, but it didn't make me want to finish the book, but I did. I always do. So again, no, don't waste your time on The Broker. Please don't. No. Let's move to The Last Juror from 2004. In this novel, a guy gets convicted for murder, which he really did. He's a terrible guy, and he gets convicted by a jury of his peers. But before he goes to jail, he makes a very solemn promise. He says, anybody who made me go to jail, you guys, you jury, I will come after you for putting me away behind bars. So, surprise, surprise, the guy gets released early and starts chasing and hunting and doing all sorts of nasty stuff to the jury of his trial. Really? So the last juror, you may expect that there is a final juror who survives, but no, that doesn't even happen either. It's, again, just a silly book. Don't read that either. Okay, let me talk about Sycamore Row from 2013. Here, we're dealing with a character from one of his previous novels, actually the first one, which I'll talk about in a minute. Here, this is a lawyer in a small town. He represents his client, who is an old rich guy. The rich guy dies. He has a will, but the will is surprising, not to say the least. He has kids, but the kids get nothing from him. His complete and total fortune, everything goes to his maid. The black maid, no less. Now, you can imagine that his children aren't very thrilled about that decision. And so what they do is they try to argue that the will is somehow invalid, that their father was insane when he wrote that. And so we see these legal proceedings where our main character is defending the black maid from getting, with the purpose for her to get the money, and then he has to fight the family's lawyer who are trying to get the inheritance from their father. And we find out why this rich guy gave all his money to his black maid. It had something to do with his troubled past. And okay, it's all right. This book does deal with some interesting issues. Racism is, again, a main theme here. And it's not bad. It's all right. It's a bit long, and there are parts that are not really very important to the story. But okay, I'm trying to get to a positive note near the end of the video, so here you go. Okay, Sycamore Row is okay. You could read it. The last bad book, so I'll save the good one for the last one. I mean, the very last one. The Runaway Jury from 1996. Here, this has also been made into a movie. The main character is an activist who tries to fight the tobacco industry. And in 1996, I suppose we were still in an era where people didn't know that smoking was bad. And there were these lawsuits by victims, well, yeah, by people who got cancer after smoking cigarettes. And so they sued a tobacco company, saying that they didn't know that smoking would make them sick. Yes, this premise is already rather... I don't know, man. Are you really sure? Even in 1996, that when you were smoking cigarettes, you didn't know that that would give you cancer? So, yeah, this idea, this concept is already something I don't really believe in. But all right, I hate smoking myself. I really, really think it's disgusting. So that made me sort of interested in the story. Okay, so we see this main character who tries to manipulate other jurors in these trials to get a positive outcome for the victims, right, for the sick people. And there's the opposition. These are lawyers employed by the tobacco companies, and they also have their tactics, which are maybe immoral. But okay, so we see this clash between one side against the other. That's classic, really clear conflict. But it's just done in such a bad way. The characters are boring. The whole proceeding is ludicrous, and don't read that either. So I've cleared all the bad books, and there's a lot of them. That's why I have decided not to read any more John Grisham books. This video is a sort of a rite of passage to just never read any John Grisham again. But to end on a positive note, I will now discuss his best book, which happens also to be his first book from 1989, called A Time to Kill. Time to Kill? Kill who? What? Where? Oh, yeah. This book is about a case of racism. What else? So the story starts with two white guys raping a young black girl. Right? That's very shocking and very provocative. Then the father of that young black girl, who is black himself, obviously, he takes justice in his own hands and he kills those two white dudes. And that's then what drives the whole story. Because we see then the guy gets arrested and he will have to face justice. Okay, but what kind of justice is that? He gets a lawyer, and the lawyer is the same character as in Sycamore Row. And so again, John Grisham has his own politics in this. He says something like, okay, what if it had been a white guy that killed the two black dudes that had raped his daughter? Would then there be such an outrage? Or is it not like that because the victims are white and the perpetrator is black? So that gets you into an interesting dynamic. So if you're interested in such, yeah, so political, it's a bit political. It's really political, isn't it? Yeah. So it deals with racism, and that's still a very hot topic, sadly. And so you can read about how John Grisham feels about this through his characters, and hopefully maybe you learn something from it. Yeah. Okay, so that is the best novel of John Grisham's, and I think it's only 3 then. I'll put up a slide where I summarize all my ratings or recommendations. I think there's only 3 that are really, 3 or 4. Did I miss anything? Ah, yes, I forgot about The Racketeer from 2012. Okay, so, and that's also good. We're still on a positive note because that one was also pretty nice. Again, a sort of a fantasy. Really? Yeah, because here we see a criminal who is trying to get back at the government for convicting him. He wasn't guilty of that particular crime, but he was still a criminal. And he gets out somehow of jail, and he feels he needs to get back at the government. So he's using all sorts of tactics. He has very valuable information that could hurt the government, and he's trying to get paid or get back at even. And so we follow this character who gets chased again by all these shady characters, secret agents, and a cat and mouse game that's entertaining to read. The Racketeer, okay, also not bad. So I think, yeah, that makes 4 novels out of the 13 that I have read that are okay. So, big majority I really cannot. And that's why I'm telling you I won't read Grisham again. It's just a lot of miss, not many hits. Okay, so that concludes the John Grisham special. Thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next episode. Bye.